What's on the docket today? What will we document?
Hello and welcome to Doll Doc. Easter is fast approaching and I couldn't miss an opportunity to create a cute Easter bunny girl. I went back and forth on her outfit a lot and decided that I wanted her to be in a snuggly faux fur hooded bodysuit.
Let's start doctoring.
Let's start with her outfit. I used a short gray faux fur for the main pieces of the bodysuit and used pink satin as trim and to line her hood. I started by cutting out the front and back pieces of the bodysuit. You will want to pay attention to the direction the faux fur is going to keep it consistent with each piece. Then I cut some small rectangles of satin for the arms and leg holes. There are two ways you can attach these. The first method is by sewing and fabric glue. Put each piece right side together and stitch 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the wrist. Then fold it over, putting a small amount of fabric glue on the opposite side of the fabric. The second method is to repeat these steps with only fabric glue instead of sewing. Once the fabric is dry, place the front piece and the back pieces right sides together. I pinned them and stitched close the arms, sides, legs, and back. Make sure to leave enough space in the back to slide your doll in. Now carefully flip it right side out. I forgot to measure her ankle width, so I had to snip a few stitches to get her feet through the leg holes. I noticed a hole in her bodysuit and I fixed that with a small patch of fabric. Then I glued a little yarn pom-pom for her tail. For her hood, I started with the lining piece, sewing together the darts, then along the top and part of the bottom. Then I pinned the earpieces together and stitched them, leaving the ends open. Flip those right side out, then I bent some floral wire to place inside the ears to make them posable. The ears are complete, so let's attach them to the hood. Sandwich the end of the ears in the dart, making sure that the satin is facing the front of the hood. Pin and stitch them together, then repeat for the second ear. Now with a little wrangling of the ears, place the hood right sides together to sew the top seam closed and the bottom half. I took the outside piece and the lining piece and pinned them right sides together, using the middle seam of the hood to line everything up. Once sewn, you can flip it right side out, and then I trimmed away the excess satin with pinking shears. Let me know below if you'd be interested in the patterns for this. If there's enough interest, I'll put them up on Etsy after I work out all the bugs. Now for her hair, let's give her a pastel ombre. Before I can add wefts, I need to make a wig cap. I do this by placing a piece of plastic film and doubled up pantyhose over the doll's head and secure it with a rubber band. I then coat the head in a layer of Elmer's Glue All Extra Strength. I let this dry completely before adding on the next layer. I used about 5 to 6 layers in total. Next, I cut out the wig cap and marked guidelines on where I wanted the different colors of hair to be. I started out by adding the purple. For small pieces like this, I like putting glue on the wefts and then attaching them to the wig cap. Next, I began adding this pastel pink. And as a transition color between the pink and blue, I went with a very nice light blonde. For the part, you want to glue down your weft in the opposite direction and then fill in the rest of that side of the head. Once the glue was dry, I combed out her hair and then sectioned it off. For this doll, I wanted to give her cute little braided pigtails. To secure the pigtails, I just tied them up with a little bit of thread and then gave her hair a quick spritz of hairspray. To prep the head for her new face, I trimmed the hair as short as possible, then removed the head from the body using a hairdryer to heat up the vinyl, and scraped out all the remaining glue and hair from the inside of the head before washing the factory paint off with 100% acetone. Squeezing the face a little bit and using a cotton swab is really helpful to get the paint out of the crease of her lips. For her face, I needed to transform Frankie's green skin into a natural color. To color correct green, you'll want to locate it on a color wheel and use the complementary color to neutralize it. I made an oops and used too dark of a red, but if you do this, you can either wipe the face clean with acetone, or if you don't want to waste all the layers of MSC you've already put on, you can mix together a skin tone soft pastel with a little green. This looks super weird going on, but once you buff it into her skin and seal it, things start coming together and she no longer looks horribly sunburned. With her face no longer red or green, I sketched on her eyes with a brown watercolor pencil. I also sketch on her brows in this layer. I was happy with everything's placement, so I sealed her with a layer of MSC and let it dry, and then began to work on contouring her face with soft pastels. With a white pencil, I fill in her scleras and then I draw on her waterline. Next, I fill in the irises completely with a light blue. For her eyeshadow, I went with a really bright pink. Don't worry if this gets on other parts of her face because you can easily remove it with a kneaded eraser. In each layer, I'm going to brighten up the whites and add more color to my irises. I go in with a sharp brown pencil to deepen some of the eye lines. And with that same pencil, I start to sketch in the brow hairs. In the comments below, let me know what your favorite part of Easter is. Next, I go in with a darker blue to add a few more details to the irises and start to draw on her pupils. Then I add a little bit of eyeliner. I also decided to give her some creases in her eyelids. With a light pink pencil, I colored her lips, and then to the crease of her lips, I placed the same pink I used on her eyelids. As I come to the end of the face up, I always like to go in and brighten the scleras of her eyes, add some highlights, and darken the pupils. I also add a dark gray to the top of her eye to give some shadow. I add on the eyelid highlight and then lightly sketch on her lashes. Lastly, I add on her white acrylic reflections and a layer of gloss varnish to the eyes and lips. There were a few parts of her body that needed to be colored, and I've been searching for a new way to color correct without having to use layer upon layer of soft pastels or acrylic paints. Eventually I will get an airbrush, but for now I wanted to try something new. I used to do special effects makeup and had a palette of alcohol activated paints I no longer use. I will be doing a more in-depth tutorial on recoloring the full body using this method soon. I activate my paints with 99% isopropyl alcohol and then use a makeup sponge to apply it to the doll's skin. Using this paint only took 2 layers, each which were sealed by MSC. I like the makeup sponge because it was less streaky and I got a little more of a real skin texture. I did find though that blushing the body with soft pastels needed to be done after all the paint was sealed. Now all this bunny needs is a basket of goodies. I used some scrap paper as a base for my basket and then glued on some twine around it. Next I traced the bottom of the basket and glued down a spiral of twine starting in the center. Don't worry if you aren't perfectly centered, just eyeball the size you need. Now trim away the paper from the bottom and leave some extra twine. Next glue the bottom to the base of your basket twine side down. For the basket handle, I braided some twine together and glued it to the inside of the basket. I wanted to create a little bit of basket filler for her treats to nestle in. For this I'll use some tissue paper, a note card, and some alcohol ink. I brushed some ink onto the tissue paper and note card to dye it green. Then once it was dry, I used pinking shears to cut it. This gave it a fun little zigzag pattern. Two treats I always enjoyed at Easter were chocolate bunnies and dyeing Easter eggs. For the bunnies and eggs, I used Sculpey clay to make them. You can use whichever clay you like, just follow the brand's baking instructions if it's oven baked clay. Once the pieces were fully baked and cooled, I decided to paint them. For the bunnies, I'll be making dark, milk, and white chocolate. I used acrylic paint for these. I was lucky and found that I had 2 shades of brown in my craft closet that worked perfectly for the milk and dark chocolate. I also painted on little eyes to give them some detail. Now, how do we paint a tiny egg? Well, let's not paint, but instead dye it. I got out my alcohol inks and an old piece of packaging from a watercolor set to hold the ink as I dyed the eggs. I diluted the ink with 91% isopropyl alcohol and placed each batch of eggs into its individual color. For lighter or darker eggs, just adjust the amount of alcohol you use to dilute. Once they were the color I wanted, I let them dry. Then I glued each egg with a small drop of hot glue to the tip of these little wooden sticks I had. I used acrylic paint and mixed together some pastel colors and painted on some designs to each of my eggs. Once these are dry, carefully peel the glue off of the base of each egg. If you get any flaking off, don't worry, just touch it up with some acrylic paint. And our cute bunny girl is ready for Easter. She's so adorable and looks so snuggly in her bunny suit. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Also, don't forget to turn on the notification bell. I post a new video each week. Have a happy Easter and thanks for watching!